So this game made me giggle, and I'm sure that's the point of it. Basically, in TVP and TVZ, the 200 unit space army for Protoss and Zerg is just so much stronger than the Terran's 200 base unit space army.
Sure thing. What's going on?
Sorry, that you hear a lot about how it's the Terran's job to be aggressive. It's the Terran's job to set the pace of the game. It's the Terran's job to limit their opponent's potentiality or whatever, you know. And it's totally true, man. You really can't just defensively get 200 unit space army. And in this game, we're gonna see that's kind of what you do, and it works out because you do some really cool drop play in the end. But your money is like 20,000 or something at the end. So while this is fun and silly, it's not like an example of what you want to be striving towards. But I think a big problem in a lot of these games is that you never really feel safe pushing out because you never really have a huge army relative to the time period because you always have all this money in the bank. And the reason, I mean, we've been saying this since I very first started watching your games, the reason that you end up with so much money in the bank is you never make enough infrastructure. You always, like you started with 3 racks and you realize you need more racks, so you make 2 more. But you didn't need 2 more, you needed 5 more. So you get this huge income, which is great. I mean, if you don't have a lot of money to play with, you can't win no matter what, right? So it's great that you're getting a really big income. 53 workers in 10 minutes is amazing. It's awesome. It's great. And your income is huge. You got basically 2,260 income per minute at 10 minutes, which is, it's amazing. That's great. Fully saturated 2 bases, amazing, great income. The problem is you have no buildings, you know, like you've got no ability to spend the money that you just made. So you go. This is another thing. You go double engineering bay and you never make 2 engineering bays. Make sure to get your armory in at a reasonable time, and then these are just going to go idle once they finish their upgrades. And now you realize, you know, you got to start spending this money. How can I spend this money? And you put down your 3 racks in your factory and your starport, and you start pumping units, and you're doing a reasonable job of spending your money while your gas surplus lives. But now you're out of gas, so these two buildings are going to kind of have to go idle, and your minerals are piling up more and more and more minerals and minerals and minerals.
Not enough
And so you're putting back your 3rd. You're like, I do need more gas. I'm going to put down my 3rd and get gas over my 3rd. But that's like in 4 minutes you're going to have slightly more gas. What are you going to do now? Your minerals are just hugely piling up. And so you never feel like you're at a point where it makes sense to push out because you don't have your macro under control. And I fall into this trap a lot myself. Where you're like, look, I can't push out when my money's high. My army is clearly not very big. Pushing out now wouldn't make any sense. And this is another thing that you notice in your games a lot is that you take gas and you don't saturate it. I would really like to see you saturate gas. It's so better than gas trap. Even though that they're going to be idle for a little while, at least then you won't have for the long. So now you're actually struggling to get your macro under control. You're just barely keeping up on depots and stuff. And you're actually going to hit 200 unit space before you can get your macro under control. And that means that you've never attacked the Zerg. He gets to do whatever he wants to have space. You don't know what he has. And you're not trying to prevent him from doing what he wants. You're just like, do whatever you want, man. Zerg, you're a good man. And this is terrible in TVZ and TVP. And you're having a lot of success in TVP with the 2-1-1 tank push that we've been doing. And that's because that's a timing push. You can't stay in your base waiting until your macro is perfect. If your macro isn't perfect, you'll just make a slightly weaker push. There's no excuse for not going. And that's how your TVZ should be too. You should have a specific time when you're gonna push out no matter what. And if you end up pushing out with a weak army and lose the game, when you watch the replay, you'll say to yourself, hey, at this time my army was weak and that's why I lost this game. Instead of like a game like this where you're like, hey, I had a bigger income than the Zerg, I had more army spending than the Zerg, I had better upgrades than the Zerg, why did I lose? You know, it's a lot harder for you to kind of comprehend what went wrong in a game where you were ahead in every category for the whole time. Whereas if you say, I'm always going to push at 10 minutes, and then you go back and you watch this replay and you push to 10 minutes and you lost, you'd say, oh, well, I only had a $1,600 army at 10 minutes. No wonder I lost. You know? So I really want you to do at least a timing opening, if not a timing style in TVZ. Make a specific push at a specific time. Pick a time. 8-minute pushes can be crazy strong, but they basically require you to one base or at least take a really late expo. 10-minute pushes are pretty standard, and they work pretty well as well. And 12-minute pushes, 12 to 14-minute pushes tend to be like max out pushes. Like you go for like 10, not 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 7 production facilities really early. And then from like 10 minutes until 12 or 13 minutes, you just do nothing but hold down the production facility buttons. And you get like this massive army and push across the field. And those styles, the 8-minute one base, the 10-minute, you know, with an expo, and the 12-minute like all in, 2-base all in kind of thing. All 3 of them are valid ways to timing push, and they all have their different pros and cons. You just gotta pick one, because doing this is not a valid thing to do. Make a bunch of Marines and tanks and just sit here. And we're gonna look at this mathematically as well, right? You hit 200 unit space, and what's the size of your army? Boop. Your army is 8,200, and there's no way to make it any bigger. 8,200. And when the Zerg hits 200 unit space, if he does, I don't know if he's gonna get all the way to 200 unit space. This fungal was really funny. I laughed and laughed. But yeah, he's not even on 200 unit space, and he already has a bigger army than you. But once he does get to 200 U, it's going to be like a $10,000 army, usually. So we have to keep going for a long time to actually get to that point. So you do lots of drops in different locations, and I'm with you on this concept. Like, especially multiple drops at once, the Zerg has a really hard time dealing with it, because Zergs like to put their whole army on one hotkey and just have their whole army in one place, because Zerg armies are so quick that it's easy to do that. You tend to have a lot of success putting your whole army in one place. Also, infestors without roach support are crap, and roaches without infestor support are crap, so they tend to want to keep their guys in a giant ball. And it's the same thing with Colossus and Stalkers, right? There's this ball mentality of both Zerg and Protoss. So you've had so much bigger of an economy for so long that even though it took him this long to max out, it's 21 minutes he's finally maxing out, whereas you've been maxed out all game and you have $10,000 in the bank. But that's kind of bad, you know? Like, you've mined $10,000 more than him. If you guys had been constantly trading armies evenly, he would be dead, right? Anyway, so we're going to see his army size is $12,700, basically $13,000. So even though you have a 200 unit space army, your army is never going to get much bigger than 8,000. And his is it's 13,000. It's like he just gets this so much bigger army than you if you let you guys both max out. So constant pressure is a really important concept in late game TVP and TVZ. And if you can't get it, like it's hard to do, and you don't want to do it, then just go for a timing. Set specific times. Just say, at this time I'm gonna make a strong push in the front, and then at this time I'm gonna make a 3-pronged drop harass, and then at this time I'm gonna make a 2-pronged drop while I push the front. And you write down those 3 times and those 3 maneuvers, and you do them every game, whether or not you have a big enough army. And then the tweaking, instead of having to try to tweak your decision making, instead of trying to tweak what you do and when you do it, you just tweak how big your army is when those things happen. You know, because like you'll find that especially if you make the same attacks at the same times, you start to get really used to how many buildings you have to make that drop work at that time, and you know, stuff like that. So switch to timing mode instead of macro mode. 28 idle SCVs, but yeah, I was looking around seeing all these idle SCVs, and I'm like, why do you? Yeah, that's a lot. So you're basically completely keeping him from mining. He's had 22 workers or less for a really long time, kicking his butt. But his army is so unbelievably huge that it gets to beat you in every engagement. Now you're trying to secure a 4th, but that's very hard because he has an army that's crazy big. So anywhere that he chooses to fight, he gets to win. Now he's going to make the huge mistake of fighting over a gap, and Zergs do this so often. They're like, if I put my Broodlords over a gap, you can't reach them with your Marines, haha. But you can reach them with your Vikings, and now his Infestors can't help. His Roaches and Infestors can't help. So he has a much bigger army than you, but half of it is in his main and half of it is over here. And he's going to accidentally stray out from underneath the rock coverage, and you're just going to run up and kill him with Marines. Marines and Vikings, that's cool. And so now he loses. So you did a lot of drop here and then drop here and then drop here and then drop here and then drop here kind of stuff, and that was really cool, and you killed him with it, and good job. But yeah, you want to do that stuff, but you want to start it at 12 minutes, 14 minutes. You don't want to be waiting until 30 minutes to start dropping, and you never want to have $10,000 in the bank because you've been sitting defensively on 3 bases forever and just mining them out. So I loved your drop press. I wish that you would pick some times at which to attack and stick to it.